All right, let's look at the latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics, which has indicated the average price of cooking gas rising year on year, falling month on month. Let's look at it. So yeah, May 2023, 4,360 naira, up 11% year on year from May of 2022. April, 4,642, a month-on-month decline of 6.07%. That's for a 5-kilogram cylinder. For a 12-kilogram cylinder, we're seeing May climbing by year-on-year 9.3%, month-on-month falling 7.61%. Joining us from our Abuja studios to discuss further, Kelvin Emmanuel, who's the CEO of Dairy Hills Ltd. Kelvin, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Wanted to ask you what you make of the increase in LPG year on year versus month on month, with one rising and the other falling. What do we make of that?
Good morning, Rotus. Thank you so much for having me. And I must wish all our Muslim friends today Baraka de Salah and happy Eid Mubarak on their celebrations today. Well, yes, the increase in the prices on LPG can be attributed to the fact that when you consider the supply chain and infrastructure challenges that LPG has in Nigeria, for example, a lot of the LPG consumed in Nigeria is actually supplied by the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Company, NLNG, and it's sold in USD because NLNG has USD obligations to its shareholders, of which the Nigerian government, the federal government, has 49% equity in it. And then you consider the fact that there are not a lot of LPG vessels. Most parts of the LPG is still imported into Nigeria from Europe. You consider the fact that there are only 2 functional LPG landing jetties in Nigeria, Navgas and NOJ in Lagos, and then you also have Doxy Terminal in Calabar in Cross River State. You consider the fact that Nigeria does not have enough bulk storage terminals for handling LPG in what in gas parlance they call it throughput for distribution. It has currently less than 20,000 metric tons. Nigeria needs anywhere between 70 and 100,000 metric tons of bulk storage terminals at every sitting time. So there are infrastructure challenges that impacts on the pricing. And then you also need to understand, Rotus, that the prices of LPG varies according to location. The prices of LPG in Lagos is not the same with the price of LPG in Maiduguri or in Yola or in Bauchi or in Delta. The prices are higher because of distribution cost, and that also has to do with the fact that 2 of the 3 major LPG landing jetties in Nigeria are actually located in Lagos, so that I mentioned earlier, NOJ and Navgas. So this boils down to the fact, Rotus, that we still have, there are 2 major ways to transport LPG. Number 1, there is the pipe infrastructure for transportation, and then there is the jetties, landing jetties, the bulk storage terminals, and the distribution network. And you know, when you look at historical trend, Rotus, between 2014 and 2023, the consumption of LPG has risen 9 times. It's risen from 144,000 metric tons to somewhere around 1.1 million metric tons. And when you consider the fact that despite that, Nigeria still has one of the lowest consumption per capita of LPG at 1.8 kg, compared to Saudi Arabia, for example, that is nearly 500 kg per capita, you see that there is a loss of market. So if you want to look at why prices of LPG are rising, you look at, number 1, upstream processing capacity for Nigeria and backward integration to ensure that Nigeria processes up to 90 or 95% of the LPG that it consumes. Number 2, the infrastructure to distribute LPG or to land LPG. Number 3, the bulk storage terminals. These are the major reasons why, despite the fact that Nigeria has the 9th largest proven reserves of natural gas in the world, Nigeria still have LPG prices very high, and that has affected the penetration of the usage of LPG in Nigeria.
Thank you so much for that breakdown. Do you expect macroeconomic factors to put upward pressure on prices going forward with everything you've described?
Yes, I expect macroeconomic factors to put upward prices because, you know, the Naira has been unified. There's only one single exchange rate. And luckily, the investor and exporter dealer window, IE rate, has reached like an equilibrium with the spot rate. So there's only one single rate in Nigeria. There is nothing like importers of LPG going to CBN to get from M to be able to import LPG. Everybody has to go to the markets to import LPG. But then again, what I will advise the Nigerian government to do, considering that you still have a very high volatility of VIX in the VIX volatility index, and the Naira is still trying to find its footing with the US dollar. What I would advise them to do, what FMDQD is setting up exchange traded derivatives is actually a step in the right direction, but the market now needs what they call a non-exchange traded derivative for what they call non-deliverable forwards in derivatives trading that will help importers and companies, both people who are importing and companies who want to invest in Nigeria, to be able to use forward contracts to hedge the risk of currency fluctuations. That will help. For example, if a company in January 2024 is billed to import $50 million worth of LPG, what is the guarantee that in January, by December 2023, when you need the FX to import, the exchange rate wouldn't have risen to 820 or 830? What is the guarantee? That's what the forward contract helps you to do. And that's what a non-exchange traded derivative market for non-deliverable forwards helps you to hedge. So on the short term, I expect that this a little bit of lack of uncertainty in the market that I expect to last for another 3 to 6 months will impact on the prices of importing LPG into Nigeria, considering that 1 metric ton of LPG on the international market is somewhere between $280 and $300 US, and you still need another like $125, $130 as landing cost for handling cost for landing LPG into Nigeria.
Thanks, Kelvin. I want to quickly ask you about this 1,000 Naira fee that the government looks to be putting on vehicle ownership. What do you make of it? I mean, it's an annual fee, but do you think it's going to put a squeeze on incomes, or is it even needed?
I think it's an excuse for revenue generation. I don't think it's a step in the right direction. I think what the government needs to do is harmonize taxes, like experts in the tax industry has advised, and reduce the level of levies they incur. The government also, I think, the proposal they made of harmonizing the revenue collection activity of MPA, NIMASA, and Nigerian Customs Service. Nigerian Customs Service in other parts of the world has no business collecting revenues and keeping 1% of it for themselves. As an incentive, they need to harmonize it into the Nigerian Revenue Service, NRS, and try to align the taxes and levies that the private sector pays. Look, there are about 41 different taxes and levies in the telecom industry, for example. Nigeria has one of the highest corporate income tax rates for telcos around the world. If you look at the International Telecom Union data, you see Nigeria has one of the highest in the world. Nigeria doesn't need excuse to generate revenue. There are clear ways to generate revenue in a structured manner based on international best practices for taxation that wouldn't put extra burden on the people. You saying you're going to charge them 1,000 Naira as proof of ownership is just an excuse that doesn't align with global best practices, considering that there's already roadworthiness that the VIO issues to car owners in Nigeria.
Thanks, Kelvin. I want to quickly ask you about disposable income for the average Nigerian, with the World Bank saying that 4,000 more people fell into poverty. What do you think can be done to alleviate that squeeze on disposable income?
So, Rotus, you see, this is a very interesting topic, and the reason it's interesting is because when this topic always comes up, what the NLC and the TUC says is, oh, we want you to raise wages. But I always say that, look, if you raise minimum wage in Nigeria, it's not going to affect the private sector. For me, there are more structural and institutional, legal and legislative frameworks that can be adopted to raise the disposable income for Nigerians. And that comes back to addressing tough areas like employee casualization. A few years ago, a member of the House of Representatives from one of the constituencies in Lagos came up with that employee casualization bill in the House of Rep. I don't know what happened to that bill, but it never saw the light of day. Look, Rotus, there needs to be like a minimum wage floor. The minimum wage debate has to go back to the states in Nigeria. It has to be driven by the states, because the minimum wage that Lagos State can pay that generates over 600 billion naira in internally generated revenue and has a factor IGR ratio of about 75 to 25% is different from the minimum wage Enugu State, for example, that has a fact ratio of between 30.9 to 69.1% can pay. They don't have the same size of pockets. So the government needs to, for the Senate president that is going to resume next week, Tuesday, he needs to go back to the issue of passing employee casualization, providing like a 6-month ceiling for companies beyond which you have to confirm the staff or let them go, to avoid abuse in different sectors of the economy, place a cap on HR outsourcing limits, and then provide social protection. There are about 15.7 million people in the National Social Register in Nigeria. I don't agree that the solution to alleviating their pain immediately is providing conditional cash transfer. President Buhari tried it, former President Buhari tried it, it didn't work. Instead, the per capita income of Nigerians dropped by about 50% within 8 years. What he can do, President Tinubu can do, is provide target subsidies to the transportation sector. Try to de-risk the costs of energy by focusing on alternatives to PMS. Alternatives like natural gas, for example, compressed natural gas, CNG. For me, those are areas where I think they can work. And there are more micro or granular steps that they can take on a critical path plan to see how they can achieve that within the next 6 months. So this blanket idea that if you raise minimum wage, for example, from 30,000, that a lot of states are not been able to implement because their fiscal position does not support their ability to pay minimum wage. It's just not the solution to the problem.
Kelvin Emmanuel, CEO, Dairy Hills Ltd. Thanks for joining us today on this public holiday. Happy Eid to you and appreciate your time.